We'll start our meeting today. Hi all, good morning, good day, good afternoon, and good night, wherever you are. Dear KMers, today, or let's say last week, we finished the third cluster. If the first cluster was explaining what AI is, introduction to AI, the second cluster was how can AI leverage KM activities, and we spoke about knowledge graphs. In the graph explanation, we spoke about knowledge graphs in the Google explanation as summaries. We spoke about expertise, about cognitive search. We spoke about auto tagging, all kinds of activities that we as KMers put a lot of time and efforts into, and AI can help us. So that was cluster 2. Then we moved on to cluster 3 and asked, where do we as human beings, as KMers, have an added value for AI projects? Now, the rationale was that AI machine learning is intelligence based on data, turning this data into knowledge. So it's very, very natural that if we are experts on data and if we are experts of turning tacit knowledge, explicit knowledge to data and knowledge and information into knowledge, so we have a great value proposition in machine learning in AI because we understand data, we understand knowledge, we understand intelligence. And we learned, we had 5 or 6 lessons where we learned different aspects, how the KMO can leverage the AI project, starting from helping to choose the business challenge which we will be handling, speaking about the knowledge engineering, speaking about the data management, speaking about the project management, and speaking about the lessons learned. And we finalized cluster 3. Today, we are opening our last part of this course. And yes, at the end of August, we are ending this course. And we will be speaking, we will have 3 lessons. I will start from the end. The last lesson is your lesson, my friends. I will share my screen and I will remind you what you are asked to prepare. Just a minute. You see a slide, and if you can, speaking 60 seconds. If someone doesn't want to speak, they can tell me and privately, write me on the mail. Define who you are and think and share us. If you assume that there are no constraints and everyone loves you, you have the budget, everyone wants you in, what AI project would I start or join? What would be my role as a knowledge management? Where do I have added value to this AI project? And if you think that there is additional knowledge or skills that are required in order to accomplish this outcome, this AI project, please share us, because maybe we can help on that. So this is the task for the last lesson. Please hand it to me a few days earlier. I'll send it again on the mail. And please prepare your 1 slide, whatever colors, structure, pictures you wish, and write the things that you think. 1 minute saying how you take what we learned and how do you take it and go with it and continue and start working, start implementing, not only reading, thinking, listening, etc. I will go back. So that's the 3rd session. I'll go back to the 2nd session. The 2nd session will be next week. I will be speaking about human empowerment in an AI generation. We are now in the closure. So we're asking ourselves, what will be the role of the human being when they're saying that machines are going to do everything? So we will speak about that next week. Today, Annie will be speaking with us on how to start implementing. What is the first step? What do I do tomorrow morning? So before I turn to Annie and hand her the leadership, I want to remind the few people that didn't finalize their payments. There are really a few of them. We have already 72 people who have paid. So if there is still someone that didn't finalize his or her payments, please, we are not sending any more reminders. We did that 2 or 3 months ago. Please do it, because we are using the money for good reason. Another request, one more thing I want to say before we start is we are preparing the course for next year. Next year, we will have one course dealing with new and enhanced methodologies and approaches to knowledge management. So John will be giving one lesson on storytelling. Maybe he will give more than one lesson, who knows? But non-storytelling, on story thinking, I'm sorry. But it's going to be fascinating. And I hope that you want to register, you want to take part, and that maybe you have additional friends, colleagues that are also interested. So please, this is our way to bring a better value proposition to knowledge management and more and better knowledge management. And we are thinking about knowledge prosperity of organization around the globe. So you are our agents. Help us improve the world through knowledge and through knowledge management. That's it for my opening. Annie, you can take them back to earth and start. Annie, you are muted.
Yeah, I was laughing and saying, let me unmute.
I will mute all, and then you will unmute yourself again.
Okay.
If 3, 2, 1. Please go.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to bring up some slides because we're here. So with all the information that we've gotten and talked about, what do we do tomorrow? How do we step out with that information? I'm going to give a slight presentation, and then we're going to have an open discussion with Jay. You remember Jay Zadi? Jay came in and talked to us about the data, which is kind of critical to both aspects of AI as well as knowledge management. So let's see where I recap what we kind of learned. Okay. All right. Okay. So there actually was a pre-class assignment. I don't know if you got it, but you could actually, take time to read it and, enjoy what artificial intelligence or how it's supposed to be transforming the world. It's a good article, and I think you'll enjoy reading it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about, moving forward. Where do we go from here? It's tomorrow morning. I'm waking up. How do I leverage this? How do I put this into practice? Or how do I begin to communicate this so that we can be incorporated into this change that's happening? I want to look at how do I increase the probability of success by being part of this transformation that's going on. And then I'm taking you back to the beginning, which was, remember the layers: data, information, intelligence, knowledge, and cognition, so that we actually realize that these are not mutually exclusive. They have to work together. So we have to integrate them and understand the components where the KMers fit, the AIers fit, the data people fit, so that we can pull this together and have a big picture of how we get from data to the point of awareness. And then we're going to have an open conversation with Jay, who's been out there, and he's been working with the AIers and the KMers, and he's been working with these groups trying to say, you got to have the data. The data must be there, and it must be clean in order for you to get the results that you want. And if we have time, I'll come back and give my last word in my new paradigm. So this is moving forward. You know, we don't really have standard methodologies. We have a lot of ways of doing things, but you know, in some fields, like with project management, I demonstrated there's a framework and a methodology that the majority of industry and government follow. Okay, and then you also have system engineering when you're putting together a system, and that comes out of Carnegie Mellon. So these are frameworks and methodologies that are all over the place. Do we need these frameworks for KM and digital transformation and, you know, knowledge AI? Yes, even though they may still leverage the project management frameworks and they may leverage the system engineering framework, because when we talked, there are like a lot of areas that we need to consider if we're going to be inserting this into any organization. So as we go through these steps, and they're like 9 steps that kind of takes you through, what do I have to think about? And notice that at the beginning, it's what is the level of abstraction, because sometimes you don't want to start out with the whole, which is an old system engineering activity. You never go after the whole, you plan, but then you go in and you do it incrementally. And you can even bring in some of the newer agile types of methods and stuff when you're doing things more incrementally and being able to change. But here's 9 steps that kind of give you insights into, you know, where do I go? How do I start thinking? What are the components that I need to think about? And what is the direction that I need to flow to make certain that if I'm on an AI project, or if I'm on a KM project, or if I'm on a data transformation project, where do I fit in as a KMer? So with increasing the probability of success, and when you look at a lot of areas, and you know, it's interesting because I kind of raised these with KM and they still fit. You know, the whole thing is you have to be intentional about planning. You know, in order to gain knowledge, it's almost like you have to know. If you don't know what components you're working with, then you're guessing, and you know, and that's not good. Sometimes it is okay to guess, and gosh, because sometimes that will work. You know, nothing's absolute. You always have this you know, element of, I can sometimes just throw things to the wind and I'll win big, or I can sometimes throw things to the wind and I'll lose big. So you got to be intentional about planning. And here's one thing that we need to do. We need to reconnect with leadership and have them at the beginning, have a steering committee, and make certain that the right players are on that team so that they can be effective leaders and sponsors of these initiatives. What a lot of times too, what happens is, and we see it, it's like faddism out there. Someone sees a new technology, let's put it into place. We'll see how it works. Like with KM, it was portals. Every organization bought a portal, and then everybody complained that there was nothing in it because they forgot that they needed to put the information in it, and that the information needed to be organized in a manner that they could retrieve it, to use it, and to then make decisions or to gain knowledge, right? So we need to align these with business initiatives, and we need to have those common business languages that people can talk to and understand what it is they're trying to do with these business cases. And ultimately, we gotta identify the roles and the responsibilities. Okay. You have many players, and everybody does not do everything. You may have someone at the top level who is theory based, and they can wind up guiding and saying, okay, here's how we envision it to work, and this has been proven through evidence. But you know what? When you go to practice, you must also incorporate the environment that you're putting it in and how you're working. So there are roles and responsibilities that go across all levels. There is theory that is needed, but then there's also practice and institutional knowledge that needs to be meshed with that. So these roles and responsibilities need to be defined, and the activities that they're performing needs to be defined as well. Key to it, know what you need to capture, engineer, and manage. This has been something that we've always had. You know, you have to have the input, the process, and the output. It works in a lot of different ways. If I don't know what I'm capturing, then how can I actually engineer it such that it can give me the outcomes that I can manage and control? Involve people early. Make certain that when you're going through this, you're defining process and procedures, because you don't have any right now. So develop them up front so that you don't have to, when you go to the next initiative, restart. Start with the pilot again and take the incremental approach. Here's something that's really big. Organizations are made up of many units, and these units contribute to organizations. So start setting up partnerships. You have system engineering areas, or you have groups that are doing that. You have IT, you got security because you're working with data. And remember, you're representing your organization in a digital format. So security is utmost, because cybersecurity can actually destroy an organization. Communications, you got to communicate to keep people in the loop, because you got so many players that you want everybody to understand what the baseline is, and also where you're moving to. Analytics, we have to have the analytics again. And you know what, I want to throw one in there that I don't have there, which is economics. We tend to forget about the economic vision of it when you're forecasting, and that's another area. Training, HR, there's so many that you need to pull together. And if you look back through most of our work, you see that there are a lot of areas that need to be involved in this that already exist, but we just need to define their role. Transparency, make certain you're communicating with everybody. You want to be transparent in the way that you're moving. And here's something that's really big that I don't know if we've even gotten this yet, but listen to the knowledge worker. You know what? They're close to the action. They're at the edge, and they know exactly what's going on within the institution, especially if you don't have standard operating procedures or things documented that they're following. Monitor and manage the progress against the plan, okay? So that's a real quick roundup of what's happening. I'm coming back to now data, information, intelligence. Here's something that when you see in the data field right now, and again, without data, we don't have integrity in our intelligence and knowledge. So know the authoritative source of the data. Where is it coming from? Because remember, you're representing that within your organization so that it can be digitally used to make decisions. Make certain that you model the data, the information, the intelligence, the knowledge, and cognition. Remember, I'm not saying do this all up front. I'm saying make certain that there's a component that says I'm evolving this so that eventually you will have that full picture. And then we won't have enterprise architecture that's void of the things that we need to be able to go in and look at a map and know exactly where certain data is being used, where certain decisions are being made, and where certain intelligence is actually contributing. Know the individual components of algorithms. Again, it's interesting because on the financial side, you can pull up the models, and you also have information of every component in a model. When you do your taxes, you have to look through because they give you a definition of everything. But yet when we go to the other side of knowledge, there's no explanation of the intangible assets or valuation areas that we're trying to gain to make decisions. So we got to know what these components of these algorithms are, and these components need to be linked back or mapped back to a business item or a business component, okay? Ensure traceability. Remember, we talked about content services. We got a lot of content, and we don't just think of them as documents. Content is something that drives us, and we need to be able to have access to it, but we need to have traceability to it. Protect the content of all components to ensure, and here's this knowledge management that we've touted for so long, the right content to the right person at the right time, okay? So what I'm gonna do now is, with that, I'm gonna actually open up, and we're gonna begin to talk with Jay so that he can give us some insights into, I'm gonna open this up. Hold on one second. Let me get back in here. Okay. Trying to bring my screen back up. Let me see if it'll let me bring it up a different way. I'm sorry. Here we go. Okay. There we go. Okay. So Jay, I'm gonna open up the discussion so that anybody who wants to jump in and ask a question, feel free. Either if you put your hand up, I'm hoping that Moria or Art or Vincent will actually catch it and let me know so that I can, be abreast of you putting your hand up if you'd like to do that. But what we're gonna do is I want to begin with Jay and just talk about some of the experiences that you've had out there if they do not properly integrate data into intelligence and knowledge, and how that kind of affects any knowledge management initiative or artificial intelligence initiative.
Sure. Thanks, Annie and Maria, for having me on this program. And I'll do my best to address your questions. And if I can't answer anything, I will certainly get back to you with the answers. So yeah. So as far as your question is concerned, I think the way I look at it, AI is certainly very important, and companies are moving towards that. But what we cannot forget is that the AI, the raw material for AI, or the product that goes into AI, making AI successful, is the underlying data, right? So that's a key component. So sometimes people forget about the data, and they kind of focus too much on the AI, and they realize when they get into it that it's creating a bigger mess than they had anticipated. So that's the first point I'd like to make. The second point is, when you're looking at the data by itself, that data needs to be in a lot of cases, what we're seeing is that the data could be coming in different formats, right? You have structured data, you have unstructured data. Lots of companies are doing social listening. They're doing a lot of mining and scraping of social data. They're doing lots of call center data, and they want to analyze that call center data, audio, to figure out what's going on. So what you're seeing now is that it's no longer data. You're dealing with one type of data that's structured. You're dealing with a whole bunch of data that comes in different formats, different types. So again, from a knowledge management standpoint, from a practitioner standpoint, it becomes very important for us to highlight the fact to the customers that, look, it's, in the past, it was a lot simpler. Things are getting a lot more complex now, and you have to really understand, you have to structure, you have to really, that's where your taxonomies and ontologies come in, and that's where your sort of organization of data comes in before you can actually make sense out of it and use it for AI, right? So going back to your question, very important to focus on the data and making sure that the customers understand that, before you jump into AI and start doing a bunch of stuff in AI, you really have to get your data house in order. And then when you're looking at the data, again, coming up with the, organizing the data, figuring out what types of data you have, what is the latency that the data is coming in from, how do you want to organize the data? Because in the past, it was easy. When you had structured data, you knew exactly what that data looked like. You could do all kinds of SQL on it, et cetera, get the information, and then do whatever you needed to do. In the new world, a lot of times, this unstructured data doesn't have a schema, doesn't have a predefined schema, or is not very structured. So somebody has to make sense out of it, right? So if I'm getting a bunch of social data coming in, or if I have a lot of call center data coming in, I have lots of different types of data coming in. Somebody really has to sit there and come up with, hey, here's what that structure of the data looks like before you can do anything with it. And so that's where I think the practitioners come in. That's where the knowledge management folks come in terms of helping organizations understand a lot of this before they can do something with it. So those are the couple of points I wanted to make around there. Annie, am I addressing your question, or am I sort of?
Yeah, no, it's fine. Let me. I'm a KMer. I'm working in an organization, and they have these AI initiatives going on. Okay. How would you approach them to say the value that you would add to that project? And I think you've given some insight into it, especially because of the data that's necessary. What would be, I guess I'm going at, what would be the area, or what would be the role and the activities that you would emphasize to them that would add value to that AI project?
Okay. Okay. So I'll use a couple of examples to explain. Go ahead, Maria. You had do you want to say something?
I want to add, if I may, before you answer, how do I put my foot into the door in order to them to listen at all?
No, that's a great question, and I will answer that with a real life example. So we have a client right now that's operating in 96 different countries, and they are just like a traditional organization, they've been in business for 40 years, they're doing very well financially, but they're now at the point where they're realizing that they've built a lot of fragmented systems. They're operating in silos where one silo doesn't know what the other one is doing, etc. Right? So when we had conversations with the folks at their executive committee level and started asking them certain questions in terms of what are the outcomes that you're looking for from a business perspective and what is holding you back from achieving those outcomes, there were 2 or 3 things that came out, right? Everybody consistently said this. Number one, I need transparency. I really need to understand what, at the big picture level, how all these pieces fit together. I have FP&A, I have operations, I have risk, I have legal, I have privacy, I have, my transactional folks, I have my ERP, right? So we have a bunch of things that are going on, but I really don't understand how these pieces fit together. And I really don't understand how they're working, right? Reason being that unless and until you have insights into that, right, into how this machinery works, you really can't make proactive decisions, because the second point they said was, we are very reactive, right? We are constantly reacting to things rather than being proactive. And the root cause for being reactive is the fact that they don't know how these pieces fit together. So now we take a step back and you look at it from a KMer's perspective. This is like the perfect storm, right? When you think about it, what do? We actually are in the business of structuring things using certain frameworks, and that's where your ontologies and taxonomies come in. We are in the business of shedding light, right? So bringing transparency into how things fit together, right? So once you lay those things out in a nice and organized manner, it makes it a lot easier for the customer to truly understand and say, oh, wow, so this is how these things happen. So in this particular example, because we're talking at the executive council level, I sort of shared the concept of a business value chain to them, right? So I said, look, let's just look at it from a very high level perspective, right? For you guys who are running the company, what you care about is your business value chain. Here are the 6 major functions that your company performs and that you perform that are the most valuable for your organization, that are generating the revenues, the profits, reducing risk, etc. Right? And these were things like order management. These were things like supply chain management. There's things like manufacturing, R&D, etc. Right? So that's the highest level. Now, when you start peeling the onion and going down, in order for me to, if I'm sitting in the executive suite, for me to run my business, yes, I want to understand the business value chain. But then, next thing I want to do is understand what is happening underneath the covers in those business, when I expand that business value chain. So there are processes for each one of those links in the business value chain. There are certain processes that are running, right? So I need to understand that. What happens next? Well, I need to understand all of the systems that are enabling those processes, whether it's a front-end web order entry system, whether it's an ERP system, whether it is a CRM system, etc. Then I want to understand the underlying data that's supporting those systems. That's either being created by those systems, being manipulated by those systems, etc. Right? So if you look at it purely from a KM perspective, this is what's going on, right? So we have an opportunity to actually start influencing these organizations at the highest level by starting to educate them, number one, and then start to talk to them about what are the areas that are most, are going to give you the biggest value. So when I look at the supply chain, we don't want to boil the ocean. We don't want to go and focus on every particular area, but you may want to take one of those areas. So I'll give you an example. In the case of this client, there's a new regulation in Russia, which basically says, hey, if any foreign company comes and manufactures a product in Russia or sells a product in Russia, they really need to be able to tell us exactly what goes into the product, where the raw materials were sourced from, where they were manufactured, where they were distributed, etc. Right? And the whole sort of the rationale behind it, or the reason for that, is ESG, right? Environmental, social, and governance. They want to make sure that you're being environmentally, safe, you're being socially good, and that you have proper governance in place, right? That's sort of the underlying. That's the reason they use for this particular regulation, right? Now, if you go to a typical company, they're struggling to figure out how do I deal with this, right? What solution do I put in place to solve this problem, because this is a big problem. If I need to, if I need to go in, if the regulator comes in and asks me a question in terms of, hey, tell me where this particular product, let's say you have a shake that you're producing, a powder for a shake, that might have 100 ingredients, right? The regulator wants to see every ingredient that goes in there, where that ingredient came from, how it was formulated, how it was shipped, till it gets to the end customer. This is a classic, in a way, KM problem, because they have to start with organizing all of this data related to the product, right? And then they need to link all of this data or into the supply chain to say, okay, so this is all my raw material data that I need to capture. This is all of my manufacturing data that I have to capture. This is all of the distribution data that I have to capture, all of the warehousing data that I have to capture, and then all of the end, customer related data, whether it's call center data, etc. So when we started talking to the customer, the first thing I said, the lady who's running this particular program is called Project Transparency. My question to her is, how are you going to solve this? And she was like, well, we have ERP systems, and we have manufacturing, and we have all of this, but we really don't know how this fits together, right? We don't understand how all these pieces fit together. And we have a lot of systems, and we have a lot of data, and we have a lot of business processes, but I really don't understand how we're going to model that to make it work, right? So my immediate reaction to her was, well, what you need is to start out with the taxonomy. You really need to define what your business process taxonomy looks like. You need to define your system taxonomy. You have to define your data taxonomy, and then other taxonomies, around your master data, your reference data, etc. Right? So that's an example where we, and a lot of these companies are struggling because they know what they know and they know what they have, but they really don't know how to go to this next level, right? And how do they take the existing information they have, structure it, and then get it into a place which will be very valuable, right? Whether it's from a regulatory standpoint, whether it's from an ESG standpoint, whether it's from a risk standpoint. So that's an example where KMS can really, really make a big impact.
Okay, let me bring forth a question from Lene Wheeler. What are examples or lessons learned of ways to educate leadership to gain buy-in for an AI KM pilot effort?
That's a great question. So my biggest recommendation or suggestion would be start with the business value or start with the challenge that they're having. Please do not focus on the solution. Please don't go in there with, hey, you need KM and you need to go do this and you need to build a taxonomy and an ontology and systems. Please start with, what is the challenge that you're trying to address, right? And like I gave you, this whole, the Russia regulation is a big challenge for them, right? Then you start peeling the onion and say, okay, so what do we need to solve for this problem, right? What data do you need, or what information do you need? What is the regulator going to ask you? Then you talk about what do you have currently in place, right? So for example, this particular customer had done some work on the business process side. They had SIPOC, they'd used the SIPOC methodology, right? Systems input, process output, etc. So they had a bunch of information there, but was just SIPOC around processes. They did not have a taxonomy around that. They didn't have anything around the data. They didn't have anything around the systems. So we said, okay, let's take what you have and let's just start populating those pieces that we have, and then let's fill in the rest of the blank, with information again. So that I would say that would be the next question. First is, what challenges and what value are you going to gain from this if we solve this challenge for you, right? Whether it's the Russia regulation, whether it is ESG problem, whether it is seed to feed. The other big thing that's happening right now is lots of these manufacturing companies, consumer product companies, etc. They're really being asked, because their customers are now, are millennials, they're Gen Zers. They're asking a lot of questions around, hey, can I trust your brand? Are you guys environmentally friendly? Are you guys socially responsible? Do you have the right governance in place? So in order to do that, they really are asking a lot of questions, and they want to look underneath the covers. Just don't tell me what ingredients are or what the nutritional facts are about your product. I need to understand where this product is coming from, who's involved in manufacturing, etc. And that's where all of the stuff that we're talking about comes in, right? So I would say challenge and outcomes. The second thing I would say is ask them what they have done already, right? Do not assume that they don't have anything. Just ask them, hey, what do you have currently that we can leverage, right? Because that tells the customer that you're interested in in sort of understand the current state, understanding what they have, and then building on top of that. The third thing I would do is going to them and saying, providing them with a very, very simple explanation of saying, well, we understand your challenge, we know what you have. There is a way to solve this problem, and here's how I would do it, right? You need structure, you need the ability to capture the metadata around some of the business processes, your systems and data. And you also need the ability to understand all of this in the context of your business or in the context of the problem that you're trying to solve. So I would do that. And then you can give them a couple of examples in terms of, this is what we did for this particular customer, right? That sort of will resonate with your client. Because a lot of times clients who don't understand KM get a little nervous, right? When they hear the buzzwords and they hear some of these things, they get nervous in terms of, okay, am I really going to get any value out of it? Or is this just a theoretical exercise? So you want to make sure that you are sort of understanding where they're coming from, educating them on what the right way to do it is, and then give them an example in terms of how it's been done for another company or another organization. So when you do those three things, you're going to put them at ease. And then it's going to open up some doors in terms of, okay, yeah, I want to now come in because I had no idea how to solve this thing. You're coming in and giving me some ideas and telling me how I can organize and how I can solve this particular problem.
Okay. Hey, Jay, let me ask a quick question, because I listened to what you're saying, and then I have a couple questions from the audience.
Sure.
But in listening to what you're saying, it's clear that, or it appears to be clear, you say that there is, or you're emphasizing that the KMer should not come in with theory, that they should come in with business, and then that they evolve to the point where they're talking to the theory practice. Can you expand on that? Because I'm hearing that as an obstacle or a challenge to them kind of getting into these projects and getting buy-in. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's something that is extremely important, because the clients, they typically, it all depends on who you're talking to, right? If you're trying to influence people, it's usually at the higher level, because these concepts, if you're trying to influence senior people to understand, hey, you need to structure your data, right? Why do you have a librarian in a library? Well, librarian has a system and allows you to organize your data. Otherwise, you'll have a big mess, right? You go into the library, you won't be able to find anything because you don't have. So you need to be able to first educate and influence the key decision makers, right? To say, hey, there's a need, there's a reason why we are here, and there's a value proposition that we bring to the table. You have a bunch of stuff. It's all over the place. It's totally disorganized. It's siloed. It's fragmented. We can help you make sense out of it. We have a methodology. We have a framework. We have ways in which we can organize all of this stuff. So it becomes very easy for you to find what you need to solve the problems that you're doing. It'll, reduce the frustration that your people have, and it will make you more productive. So what I try to do is, when I talk to my KM friends or when I bring them into projects, the first thing I tell them is, please don't use any buzzwords that will scare out the client right off the bat. You can bring those in later, but when you're having the initial conversation, just have it at the business level. Just talk to them about, what is the problem you're having? Okay, you have a lot of data, you don't know where it is, it's fragmented, nobody understands it. I can help you organize it, right? And then maybe just to have some conversation around, so what are the types of challenges you're having, right? Let me understand. And I'll give you an example. SharePoint is fantastic, but SharePoint becomes a dumping ground because nobody has bothered to go in and structure any of that stuff. So initially everybody's excited about, oh, I have SharePoint and I'm going to put stuff in there. But 6 months later, it's a big mess, right? So we have situations where we've gone to clients and they're like, yeah, we've got all these documents and they're all in SharePoint, but nobody can find it. Nobody knows what the latest version of anything is. Nobody really knows who owns it and who's the authoritative source, who's supposed to do it. And that's when I scratch my head and say, well, this is where the KMers come in. Somebody needs to come in and educate them to say, look, you need a way to organize this stuff. You need a way to, set accountability. You need to make sure somebody's managing this stuff. You need a way to archive all of the stuff that's junk and keep the stuff that's really valuable. And the same thing applies to data, right? So that's where I believe you start off with a business level conversation, just simple language, understand the problem, understand the challenges that they're having, provide some simple examples of how you can organize and help them solve that problem. And then you
Okay.
go into the actual meat of the discussion and start talking. If you have to go into the technical jargon, you can go in
Okay.
there and say, well, this is how we do it. Something called a ontology. There's taxonomies. This is how we can help you organize it, and this is how it's going to benefit you.
Yeah, great
Yeah.
to segue to,
Yes,
you
there's
mentioned-
another question of Manoj, but
Yeah,
also if I can add, and I want to connect it to what we were speaking here the last weeks. One of the customers I'm working with now, when I approached him, he already knew what his business needed, and he knew what the solution he wants is. He didn't know how to get from here to there. And he even knew of several examples of other organizations that already succeeded. And his question was not if AI, but are you capable of doing the job? And here, dear friends, dear colleagues, please read my lips. I started explaining step by step after he knows what the need is and knows what the solution is. And he has 5 companies that want to help him. And I'm sitting inside, but he said, but this is helping me and this is helping me. I'm not sure that I want too many people. So I started speaking about knowledge engineering, about how Jay said, what is the practical process? What are the steps that we will be doing in the few weeks, not the whole process? What are the first steps that should be accomplished? And when I was speaking about using the terms of knowledge that we spoke about here in this class of knowledge engineering, and B, giving him a confidence feeling that he is now on stable place, that I know what I'm speaking about. I know how to do it. I'm not only showing off with my hands. He was with me. He asked me, okay, when are we starting? So
there you go.
Sometimes they don't know what their need is. We have to help them there. Sometimes they know what the need is. They don't know what the solution is. Sometimes they know even both and know that there are examples. Listen to them carefully where they are missing. And if they have all of that, continue to the next step. Come up with confidence using terms of knowledge and knowledge management, not only data, because otherwise big data people will come on and say, okay, we are doing the curation and the ontology and the taxonomy. That's fine. Come up with sentences with terms of knowledge engineering and show how the first steps will be approached, what will be accomplished, and they're hearing someone who knows what he's speaking about. Sorry, that was too long.
No,
that's okay.
That was excellent.
Okay,
And
so
it takes us to the next question.
Do you want to help us on with Manoj's question? Manoj is asking about the KDD.
Right. Mhm.
And
So
you know what? Let's ask Manoj. Manoj, do you want to speak out, or should Annie help you? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah.
Here's Manoj.
Hello.
there he is.
Manoj,
Hello.
can you show? Okay, you're without a
Manoj.
camera. Please go.
Right. So this is a methodology which is based on knowledge structuring. It doesn't talk much about how to implement knowledge in the organization and how to how to incentivize people who are experts in knowledge. And it says 3 building blocks: product, process, and statement of relevance. They are fit for purpose for specifying the basics of domain knowledge. Then we add usage and IT applications to automate the sensible, to bring in sensible automation to the entire pieces of building blocks, and usage, which is to customize the domain knowledge to an enterprise knowledge. And then we add 2 more that becomes project knowledge, which is requirement and test cases. So with these 3, 5, and 7 building blocks, at the first level, maybe for learners, the basic learners, we tell them this is how domain knowledge moves on to enterprise knowledge, and enterprise knowledge moves on to project knowledge, and project knowledge drives software development. So linking domain knowledge to project knowledge and further to software development. And I have come up with a small framework, which is what I thought not only in this discussion, but throughout the series of discussions we had, when we saw the complexities of knowledge management, but then where to start with it, I thought this particular framework is a good point to start the journey of knowledge management.
That's great, Manoj. I totally agree. I think anytime you're talking to a client, if you have a simple framework that you can use as part of the conversation, that really helps, because it kind of allows you to kind of convince or at least influence the client's thinking, right? Because a framework will keep you boxed in. It will show them the key pieces of the puzzle, if you may, and how you can go about solving their problem using it. So to Manoj's point, Manoj, it'll be great if you can share the framework with others in this course, if you're able to, because yes, those things certainly help. A framework, a methodology, as Maria was saying, having a simple methodology, you say, look, I have a 5-step methodology in terms of how we go about doing this. That makes the customer feel a lot more comfortable to say, yeah, they really have something tangible in terms of the framework, and then they have a methodology that allows them to implement that framework to solve my problem. It kind of start making sense to them, right? Versus somebody who comes in and says, yeah, I can solve it, but they don't have the necessary framework or the methodology or the past performance, right? You can also use past performance to say, look, this is how I solved this problem for this other client. May not be the exact same problem, but similar. And that makes the customer feel a lot more comfortable that, okay, yeah, they've done it in the past. They have a framework and a methodology, and they can help me deliver, or solve my problem.
Absolutely, and coincidentally, it is a 5-step process to do the entire work of domain knowledge to software development. So I'll share it with Moria. Moria knows about it, and we'll figure it out. How do we spread this to the other members? It is free, and because it is a new framework, we do want its awareness to be increased to people who may be getting benefited out of it.
That's awesome. Yeah, that is awesome. And one more point I'd like to make is the customers typically will come with a big problem, right? And you want to be really careful not getting caught up in that. What you want to do is you want to start narrowing the scope down to something that's manageable to start off with. So what you want to tell the customer is, yes, I understand your problem, right? It's an ESG problem. You're trying to solve this, but we really need to do it in a phased manner. And we want to really start with something that's small in scope to begin with, right? Maybe one component of that particular problem. Address that problem, show them that it's going to work. Then you start building on top of that. That's also very, very important in terms of how you scope it. Because if you don't scope it right, and if you don't show them value quickly, they're going to lose interest. So it's very important to, once you convince the customer that you can do it, the next thing is working with the customer to figure out what the right scope is to start off with. Because you want to start small, you want to deliver, and then you want to keep building on that. So that would be my advice as well.
Let me expand on that for a second too, because so many times we say start little, and I think people actually take that literally, but sometimes you still need that roadmap to know how it fits into the bigger picture. Okay, so how do they move forward with starting a pilot without without the architecture of where it will wind up, so to speak? And how would you recommend moving forward with that? And also, do you do one at a time, or is there a possibility to do several initiatives? And what is the approach that you would take to that?
Oh, that's a great question, Annie. So the way I typically do it is I'll give you the example of the Russia regulation, right? So this is transparency, and they want to build this, and the deadline for this is March 2022, right? So it's coming up pretty fast. So the first thing I did was say, okay, let's understand what is it that you want to deliver as part of this exercise, right? What is it that the regulator is asking for? And then they come up with, okay, here are the 3 or 4 major things, right? Regulator wants to know where this thing is sourced from. Regulator wants to understand what we've done with it. Regulator wants to do to figure out if we are being environmentally, safe, et cetera, et cetera. Then you back from there in terms of, okay, so in order for us to do that, we really need to understand, our raw material related information. We need to understand our manufacturing, et cetera. And then once you've laid that out at a high level, you can start saying, okay, let's focus on the raw material stuff first, because that's like fundamental, right? for us to get to that end reporting, having information about the raw materials and where they're sourced from, et cetera, becomes very important. So I would then just say, let's, rather than focusing on the 6 different pieces, I would like to start with the first piece and then start drilling down on that, right? So that would be one way to sort of address it. Now, the other question is, how do I do it? I have an aggressive timeline. I gotta do all of this stuff, not just the knowledge management aspect of it, but I also have to build all the plumbing. I have to build all of the capabilities to do the reporting to the regulator. How do I do it, in like 6 months or 8 months? And I'm talking about a global organization, right? So this is where you have to be creative and think out of the box. And so first thing I said was, okay, if we focus on the raw material, let's figure out what information do you already have, right? Do you have existing data models? Do you have existing, business process related documentation? Do you have existing things that we can use, right? Number 2, who are the subject matter experts that we can count on for these things, right? Number 3, let's just crowdsource a lot of that information, because you as a KMer probably don't have the domain expertise or don't have the bandwidth. I mean, you can bring in 1 or 2 other members to your team, but you're really not going to have enough bandwidth to go solve all the problems. You're not going to have the domain knowledge. You're not going to have the capacity or some of the information, right? So this is where I said, well, we'll have to crowdsource a lot of this information, right? So we'll develop the taxonomies, we'll develop the ontologies, we'll kind of lay out everything that's needed, sort of template it out and share the framework. But then we need other people to kind of start filling in the blanks over here for us to get to where we need to be, right? So then we get into the crowdsourcing aspect of that. Then the next question was, okay, how do we bring all of these subject matter experts together and educate them on what is it that they need to do and how it's going to be done, et cetera. So we said, well, we're going to do some workshops, right? So we'll help you plan those workshops where we will start out by educating them in terms of what this framework is all about, what our methodology is going to be, et cetera. And then we're going to hand these templates to these folks. Some of them will be pre-populated based on the information you already have. We'll pre-populate, so we reduce the work for these guys. And then we hand it to them, give them a deadline and say, okay, by this date, please get it over to us because we have a lot of other stuff to do. So that's how we've kind of approached it. And the client really likes that because number 1, we've kind of said that we understand the big problem. Number 2, we narrowed it down to a smaller, area that was very important, fundamental. Number 3, we sort of understood what they have currently, and we're leveraging that. Number 3, we kind of came up with, we kind of organized, we said we'll organize all of this stuff for them and pre-populate some of the things. Number 4, we said we'll crowdsource so we can meet your deadlines without holding you up. Number 5, we helped them with the workshops and kind of educating all the subject matter experts in terms of this whole KM landscape and what is needed and why it's important. And we also, explain our methodology and what they're going to get at the end of this exercise, et cetera. And then number 5, start working with these other guys, right? We have people in IT, people in security, people in risk management, et cetera, to kind of share what we're doing, because those people are going to benefit, believe it or not, by the work that we're doing here, even though we're doing it for Project Transparency. But people in risk need that information that we're capturing. People in security need that. People in privacy need that. People in legal need that. So in a way, we're actually solving one problem, but we're benefiting half a dozen other organizations. So the other thing that we proposed is to say, before we finalize these templates and the information and metadata and data that needs to be captured, let's meet and share this with the other groups. Let's share with legal, compliance, ethics, et cetera, to find out if there's additional data points that they want to capture at the business process level, at the system level, at the data level. Let's incorporate that also into this so that once we've captured it, we don't have to go back again. And all of this information that we're building, all this, this knowledge repository we're building can be leveraged by multiple organizations. So this becomes a much more valuable exercise than what they had initially thought about, to say, okay, I'm just solving one problem. So this is how you want to kind of think out of the box and be creative to show your value, and also to let the client know that you're truly making a difference and that you're trying to help them solve this very complex problem.
How often do you get buy-in from the client with that approach?
It depends. In some cases, it's a tough sell because you're educating, and especially when you're talking about a very complex sort of let's say GDPR, right, is a big thing right now, and we're trying to help them solve that problem. They're thinking, I need a point solution. I need a privacy tool to handle my GDPR compliance. What they're not thinking is it's bigger than just GDPR. Like this example I gave you, right? Yes, GDPR is something that's needed, but how would you solve if you were trying to build a framework and you're trying to build a foundation? I want to build it so that it can solve multiple things. I don't want to build one-off solutions, that one solution for GDPR, one solution for my risk management. If I'm doing CCAR, for example, if I'm doing anti-money laundering, et cetera, one solution for my ESG, one solution for CSR, right? But as a knowledge practitioner, I want to help them build a framework and a platform that will allow them to solve all of these things, right? So that's what I'm thinking. So when you're when you're kind of going down that path, it's a little bit of a tougher exercise because they're trying to wrap their heads around it and saying, well, GDPR itself is very compliance. Now you're telling me that you can solve, my enterprise risk and my compliance and my ESG. But what they don't understand is if you do it right, if you structure your data right, if you structure your processes correctly, if you structure your, all of these things properly at the get-go, then everything falls into place, right? So you don't have to keep reinventing the wheel and keep building all these one-off solutions if you just think about it the right way, right? So that's where it takes a little bit of so this one client, I was talking to the head of data for almost 2.5 months because we're doing the global data strategy for them. But as part of that strategy, what we realize is there's a consistent pattern of their people saying, I need transparency. I need to understand how all these pieces fit together. I really don't understand how these silos operate, right? So I had to go take a step back and tell him, look, you need a way to solve this problem where your people can understand all these pieces. And if you solve that problem, you can also solve your risk problem and your compliance problem and your ESG problem because you would have already modeled all of these things that you need to solve the transparency problem. You see what I mean? So yes, it is challenging, but if you do it the right way, if you focus on the problems they're trying to solve and then in a credible way, show them how it can be done. So I had to actually create some building blocks for him and start showing him, look, you have all of these pieces, but they're all over the place. Once you organize all of these things and connect them in a nice little package, you can start seeing the puzzle and see how it operates. And then I gave him the example of enterprise risk management. So when we're having a conversation with the head of risk, he constantly kept saying, well, I can't deal with all these silos. I really need, to understand how things operate at the enterprise level. How do I do that, right? So that's when I went back to the head of data and said, look, bingo, you need all of these pieces to fit together so that your risk person understands what's going on, right? Same thing with, supply chain people. The guy who heads up supply chain planning is saying, I really don't understand all these silos I have 6 silos within supply chain. I really need to understand how this fits together. So that is where to answer your question, yes, sometimes it's hard, but if you do it in a meaningful way and you kind of put the visual pieces together and then overlay it with the business problems you're trying to solve and show them why once you do it one time properly, it's going to help you, it's going to give you a multiplicative results or value. It really starts resonating and they start realizing because nobody has really sat down and explained that problem and how to solve it to them.
It's interesting, and I'm thinking back, and I look at Candace. I remember we were talking, and she stated, "We have a fundamental problem. We need to educate leadership." And the more I listen to this and how we're moving forward, I see it more and more because we spend a whole lot of time at the project level educating, as opposed to executing, so to speak. And it's because of a lack of that word knowledge. So it seems like we got to get in on the front end and perhaps have some of these knowledge sessions where people are willing to learn prior to kicking off some of these initiatives. So I'm going to open. I'm going to open the floor for a second. We're actually at 10:01.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And well, this was great. And thank you, Jay. I would definitely appreciate hearing it from someone out in the field. if there's any other questions, if someone sends them out, I'm sure that we can forward them to Jay and he could answer them, or
Yeah, I'd be happy
send
to
them
help.
to me or one of our team members. I'm just gonna bring up this slide for one quick second, and I know I got to get you out of here, but
Ved is also writing something here. So,
Mhm.
and I just want to add that when Jay spoke about the term speaking with your client, it can be an inner organization client. It doesn't have to be that you're a consultant. You can be supplying in the organization some help, some assistant. It's not that you're outside the organization and he's in. Ved is asking, Ved, do you want to speak out or do you want me to help you? One,
Yeah.
two.
Hi, Moria. Yeah.
Hi, Ved. Here you are.
Right. So I know this is an interruption. We should continue with the conversation and it's only at the end. I thought people have started leaving because they have meetings. So there is this Bangalore K community, which meets every alternate month. And I have just posted a link with all the details, and it's at the same time as around the same time as we have this session. So it's tomorrow. If any of you is interested, please go ahead and register. So,
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ved.
Sure.
Just real
Thank
quick,
you.
some last words, and they're in the slides that you would get just throughout everything. But one of the first things I want to emphasize is without data, these integrations cannot exist, and lack of data integrity increases the probability of error and failure. And then I want to jump to the last one. Start with what you know, the as is. We're right back to the engineering concepts, because or else you're going to keep reinventing the wheel and you're going to get farther and farther away from being able to come to a viable solution, so to speak. And I know we say a lot of projects out there say they've been successful, but then when we begin to look at them, we see that there are components that are missing. Okay. I'm sorry, my PC always, it's a new paradigm. And these two fellows, I think, hit the nail on the head. We can't solve problems by using the same kind of thinking we used when we created them. And knowledge has to be improved, challenged, and increased constantly, or it vanishes. We got to think out of the box, and we got to find new ways to actually insert ourselves into these projects as KMers, and also in setting up these business initiatives with the right players at the table. Everybody doesn't know everything. So we got to define these activities. And from these activities, we need to determine what is the skill set and what is the ability needed to achieve them. Okay. So with that, I say thank you. And any last words?
I'm looking if anyone added another last question. No, everyone, Jay is thanking you again and again for your practical yet encouraging ideas and tips and tricks, also methodologies, but also the tips, the bottom lines. So behalf of everyone here, thank you again. Thank you, Annie, for your wise words and for bringing Jay in. And see you next week. We will be speaking about people, about human beings in this new world of AI. Please be with us next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank
very much.
you. Thanks, Jay.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Moria, hang back. Moria and Vincent. We got a question.
What a question.
Tomorrow morning, the set with Edwin. He wanted 3, I think.
No, we told him that we are 4.
Oh, okay.
And he said
Okay.
that he'll handle it.
Okay, because I wasn't certain.
He
I
wants
saw
to
that
start with 3 because he said that he's regular to 2 to 3. But but then we said, but it's important for us to be together. So he said, okay. So I tried. Every time I have a new challenge.
Okay, make it a panel.
Yes.
And
Wow.
I promised that we will respect one another and not jump into one into the other's words. And we will hold ourselves, especially me, I can say, because I always like adding in. Vincent is always quiet and
Yes,
polite.
yes, I will.
Now that he's turned 50,
Yeah, now I'm a wise man and I have white hair, and so now
We all have white hair.
stop being so happy with yourself. I don't know about Annie. I had this week my 57th birthday. Yay.
Oh, happy birthday, Moya. Happy
So,
Happy
birthday.
birthday,
I
Moya.
am not wiser, but older than you.
Yes, just a bit, yes.
Just a
It's
bit.
great.
No, just a
And you
bit.
know what? I'm not sure it will be easy for you to catch me.
Yeah, oh no, probably not. No, for sure, yes, you are full of energy, even though I'm 50.
No, I mean with the age.
With the
Oh,
age.
with the age. Ah, okay, yes. No, I
No,
I
and
think
you
will
don't
be always
want
ahead,
that to
yes.
happen. Look, you don't want him to catch you because you want to live long.
All together.
Yeah.
We
you-
have a lot of great dreams for knowledge management and other things.
Mhm.
Great.
Yes.
Okay,
So this,
Annie, I think it was a very good session today.
Yes,
Good.
great, yes.
And people really feel that it's practical. And it's not by chance that I added my speech, because I wanted to show people how it's connected to what we learned. That they
No,
take
it was
these
great.
sentences and
Mhm.
put them and add them in.
Absolutely.
And sometimes that makes the difference, because
Absolutely.
everyone, there are so many people who are AIers today coming say,
Mhm.
oh, you can do that, you can do that, you can solve that, this company did this company did that. And then when you come out and say, okay, knowledge, you speak with knowledge terms and you say, what we have to do in the coming months is A, B, C, D, and everything is about knowledge. So in the
Mhm.
sense that A, you know, and B, it's
Mhm.
about knowledge. So you are the right person in the organization to help you.
Absolutely.
So I wanted to connect it back to our
Mhm.
course, to our learning. It's not
Mhm.
something different. What we taught them, they and we can use tomorrow morning.
Mhm. No, I agree. I totally agree. And you know, part of the emphasis here is I want, we never set up the organization. You had CKOs, and then no organization was set up, right? Now we got digital, and we got digital officers. I would love to see them bring it under the umbrella of, I mean, basically this is the intangible area, which is digital. And I would love to see all of them fit within that umbrella of the digital officer, where you have the CKO, where you have the intelligence officer, you know, with each of those components there, so that we know how they fit in.
I'm not
That
sure.
structure has to be there.
I'm sorry. I'm not sure that it's not misleading, because in too many organizations that I find that the CDO is in charge for digital presence. I mean, social media channels. So, and he
Mhm.
doesn't care about anything else.
Right,
And
Absolutely.
just saying, okay, let's add him in. We
absolutely.
will confuse the organizations. We will confuse. You're speaking about the vision.
Right, I'm
Under
speaking about the vision of
reality,
bringing them all together.
CDO is
Mhm.
something else. It's Facebook and it's Twitter.
Oh, that's what you're saying as the digital officer? Wow,
Digital
okay.
officer is a digital presence
Wow.
in new media, in websites,
Mhm.
in Facebook, in Twitter, etc.
Wow. Oh, okay. So they have to be defined what they are, because that's not my idea of it.
Or
Yeah.
digital transformation officer, yes. But
That's something
Yeah, or
else.
something.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
That's something else. These are two
Yeah.
different terms.
yes,
You can
Yeah,
say
you're
that
right.
digital is also the name of the digital historical company computing second to IBM. That's not digital transformation, and it's not digital CDO. We all
Common
using the
language.
same word for different usages.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because I really didn't think of it in those terms. Mhm.
It took me
Okay,
time until I understood what they're speaking about.
yeah. What were you saying, Vincent? I thought you were saying something.
Sorry, it's actually Ian Hook here, and I know I'm kind of on after hours here, right? I know that. Apologies for that.
No, we're happy. We're happy.
I just wanted to talk a little bit. I know we are well into the session, but I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the stuff that I've done in the past around AI and KM, just in case it was interesting, and in case you wanted to kind of reach out with some of these sessions to the people that are still there.
Right. So I can squeeze into my next week lesson of you, first 5-10 minutes of you ending this session with examples before I start speaking about my session. Please send me in advance your presentation. And, and we will add you, and we will end this session in the next session, giving more examples how to start and giving some examples, and then I'll continue to my stuff. You know that I know how to do it short because I don't want too many messages in one lesson.
So I don't know what my position is in talking openly about it. That's my challenge right now. Okay, and I'll explain why. So I used to work for Accenture. Okay, and what I did in Accenture is I built their whole internal AI-based KM system for them. All right, so there's a whole bunch of stuff that I can explain around that. And then I left about a year ago to go to where I'm working now, which is in Novartis. Okay, so I don't know what my position is to talk openly on a group like this about Accenture's internal AI-based knowledge management system, right?
So please, if you can check, A, if you can speak naming them, B, if you can say that you worked somewhere and you're not now speaking about the name of the company, but you will give an example what you did in some organization. And C, tell me that it's not applicable and we'll say, okay, but thank you for your good intent.
So I can do, is it useful if I don't know everybody's schedule, but is it useful if I explain a little bit about what we did there so you got some understanding?
You can also speak partially. You can speak with their name, without their name, partially, or no. We have four options. Update me what's most convenient for you.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
All right.
No worries.
Well, you all have a great week.
Yeah.
And I will see you, Vincent and Moria tomorrow.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Bye,
Thank
all.
you,
Bye,
guys.
y'all.
Yeah,
Bye.
bye-bye.